Scott has been a familiar face to our club over the years. He joined us last in July of 2022 when we kicked off our year, but he had been with us before. I think then we were at Ace Cafe. Scott began his career with Orange County Public Schools at University High School as a social studies teacher for 11 years. He also served as an administrative dean and assistant principal. In 2006, he was appointed to be the director of legislative and congressional relations, and he later served as the chief negotiator for the school district. In 2016, he was appointed chief communications officer and president of the Foundation for Orange County Public Schools. He earned his bachelor's degree in political science and government from Rollins College, and he's got a master's degree in education leadership from the University of Central Florida. Scott's wife, Catherine, is a kindergarten teacher in Orange County, and they have 2 adult children. So if you would please give a warm Rotary welcome and a return for Scott Howat.
The half-cent sales tax, over the course of time, we've been able to address 136 schools in Orange County, renovate or replace those schools. Some of you have driven by some of our replacement schools, such as Evans or Oak Ridge, or even Palm Lake Elementary, or Lake Whitney Elementary, or Waterford Elementary. Those are some of the schools that were extremely old. They were a lot of them had a lot of portables based, or they were built in the 60s, early 60s, and were in desperate need of renovation. We've been able to utilize the half-cent sales tax to do that. It generates we'll estimate to generate about $4 billion over the next 10 years. Our capital need over that time is $8.9 billion to address. We have 75 schools that will be 25 years or older over the next 10 years. Plus, we have a capital renewal program where we go in and update systems within our schools, HVAC systems, electrical, roofs, and those types of things. So all of that, the dollars help to go towards that purpose. We recognize that the half-cent sales tax is an investment. In fact, $2.6 billion have been invested since 2010. And we just, from The Economist, have gotten an update on that. That's actually resulted in 4.6. I got to get to the slides. About 4.6 billion return. So $1.58 for every dollar invested in the half-penny sales tax goes back into the economy. It creates 1,850 jobs a year in the construction industry and things around building schools. Here's some of our schools. We've been able to remove 3,000 portables off our campuses and either replace them with permanent structure or new schools that have replaced that. Prior to 2002, there wasn't a mechanism to build new schools for relief. I taught at University High School. We had 4,900 students. We had more portable classrooms than we had permanent classrooms before Timber Creek opened. We've been able to accelerate some of that. University was rebuilt with sales tax dollars, and they added permanent capacity to replace the portables that were there. Our new schools are not built solely, or a portion of it comes from the half-penny sales tax. The new schools are actually built with impact fees. So we charge impact fees, and they actually build the new schools. This helps to go to renovate those. Like I said, 136 schools, 75 portables replaced. Give you an idea of the amount of construction here in Orange County. So since 2011, the entire state, all 67 school districts have built 222 new schools. Orange County's built 64 of them here. just to address the growth in our area and specifically in the surrounding areas. Miami-Dade, the largest school district in the state, has built 15 in the same time period. Here's some of our old campuses, new campuses that I was taught. There's Evans, Glenridge, Lovell. Give you some of the idea of what we were versus what we have today, and obviously trying to maintain and sustain those. Like I said, 75 schools will be 25 years or older over the next 10 years. The half-cent continuation, like I said, is $4 billion to our to the 8.9 billion that we have. The average construction cost, here's some of the construction cost escalators we've seen since the pandemic, just to give you an idea, doubled almost in the amount that it costs just to do an elementary school. Here's our budgeted capital reserves by source. 1.5 mils capital comes out of the property tax. Impact fees make up, that's the orange line. Impact fees make up the blue, the navy blue, and then the sales tax is the gold. It makes up about 45% of the total revenues for the school district. 50% of the sales tax is paid for by tourists, by individuals that either live right outside our county from the surrounding counties that come in and purchase goods and services, or they travel in, they're tourists, they come in from other states, other countries. So 50% of that revenue that you saw comes from that purpose. Like I said, 2.6 billion of school construction, 4.1 billion impacted to the economy within Orange County, and 1,850 jobs per year. We have an oversight committee that's overseen the sales tax since 2002. It was actually started in 1997. It was designed to bring in volunteer experts that would oversee the spending of the money and how our capital plan worked every year. So they meet once a month, the Cove Committee. They oversee all of our construction projects, our 10-year plan, and they look at how the money's being spent, where it's being spent, and redirect that money. Cove, no one on Cove works for the district or does business with the district. So therefore, making sure that there's no conflicts of interest within that group, that they are looking at it from a neutral party. They do, like I said, oversee all of that. Pat Knipe is our chair. He's been the chair of the Cove Committee for a number of years now and has led that group. There's, I think, 7 members right now of the Cove Committee, and that is required by the referendum. It does address school safety and security, not the people or the animals. There is Coco, our weapon sniffing dog is there. Coco, she is 6 years old. She's beautiful, but not paid for with the half-cent sales tax. But the bollards and the cameras and those things are paid for. And those are the things that we install and put in to upgrade our security in our schools, especially since Sandy Hook in 2014. We started down that road and we've continued to do that ever since, whether it's when Uvalde and even Winder, which the Georgia tragedy that happened yesterday. Our schools, single point entry, we have coated glass outside. All the doors inside need to be locked. We're working on a key coding system right now so that those doors can be open and closed, but only from those that are authorized to be inside the school. So added security measures. Here's the ballot language that'll be on the ballot summary. Same ballot language from 2002. The only change, substantive change, was adding charter schools. Charter schools were not included in 2002 or 2014. They must be included now by statute. They require that charter schools get a proportionate share, which is about 10% of the money. Vote for, vote against, just to give you that perspective of what it looked like before we had the it. So the half-cent sales tax will be on November 5th ballot. It is the last item on the ballot. It will be a long ballot. It will be about a 4-page ballot. Our referendum is always the last item. So I tell people this: Orange County Public Schools is first in your heart, last on the ballot. Just tell them that. So, you know, I was at the I was at one of I was presenting to the Democratic Party of Orlando or of Orange County, and I said, just flip the ballot over and mark mark your selection on the last item, right? And then you can go back and fill out. That's what I said. He goes, yeah, that's not what we said, but that's okay. That's, when we're out there talking about it, it's really is about awareness. There'll be ballot fatigue. People won't realize it's there. We want to make sure that the awareness that it's there. So October 2nd is vote by mail. October 7th is a deadline to register to vote. Make sure you update your mailer and mailing for ballots. Make sure that's updated. And then October 21st through November 3rd is early voting and the general election day. I appreciate your time and thank you for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions. Mr. President, for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions. Mr. President.
One second.
Thank you.
Hi there. I have two questions, if that's all right. This particular looking to pass is the continuation of the current half penny tax.
It
correct? Not
is.
a new one.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it does say continuation, even in the ballot language, it says that. So it is a continuation, yes.
And you showed all these numbers about how much money was coming from the tax and how much money was coming from property taxes. Where's the money from the lottery?
It does not go to so the majority, the 98% of the lottery money goes towards Bright Futures scholarships. That's where that money goes. We don't get any portion of lottery for K-12 for operational or capital. So I do want to make a point though, and you raised a good issue. I didn't get a chance because of the slides to go over, but we don't get any money from the state for maintenance or new construction at all. The legislature does not fund that. They eliminated in 2008, they eliminated new construction dollars. And in 2018, they eliminated maintenance dollars. And so we rely solely on property tax, the 1.5 mils and half-cent sales tax, if you have it. We actually are one of the districts, and more districts are asking their voters for a half-cent sales tax. We're fortunate we've had it. And actually in 2002, we reduced the millage for capital from 2 mils to 1.5 in order to offset the cost of the half-cent sales tax. And it's remained 1.5 mils property and then the half-cent sales tax.
Thank you for the presentation. Got two quick questions.
Sure.
I also want to make a comment about the portables. As a former student of OCPS K through 12, it was kind of a headache every day going out there, like as somebody who experienced this firsthand. And my mom even was like, when are they going to deal with this? And it looks like you guys got it taken care of. So that's great.
They didn't call them living cottages. It's always nice. It's always a nice thing to call it that, you know. I'm a communications guy. So.
We call them trailers.
There, no, don't do that.
The trailer.
We need to rename that, Chris. I mean, let's call it the shower cottage or something. We can call it.
So you mentioned on the new ballot that the charter schools would be involved and it would be about 10% of the funds would go to them. Do they make up around like 10% of the schools? Is that comparative?
It's shared on a proportionate student ratio, 10 to 12% roughly. So yeah, it depends on just the enrollment numbers and what we see. We won't have our final enrollment numbers for this year until October. That's when our FTE counts, our full-time equivalency of students goes in October, but roughly 10 to 12%.
Okay. And then my last question was regarding if this vote does not pass, do you have some contingencies in place to maintain the standard of excellence you guys have been doing with the half-cent tax? Where would you pull this money from if it doesn't work?
And that's a great question. It's one you don't want to think about necessarily just because of the need that we're seeing. We would actually have to take and prioritize what projects and we're dealing with projects like this time of year, ACs, HVACs go down, chillers go down all the time. We're dealing with that. And we do that through the half-cent sales tax. That would be the first priority, immediate needs. Like we would have to just deal with just that side of it. And all the reconstruction, renovation, those types of projects would have to be done either piecemeal or one by one. And the Cove Committee would come back and look at whatever plan that looked like. But you're looking at about a 45% reduction in revenues to try to deal with that. And we'd probably have to go back to the legislature, see if they would increase the 1.5 mills back to 2 mills property in order to try to do something. But it would be that would be a very, very heavy lift.
Two
Yes.
questions for me also.
Mhm.
Undoubtedly, Orange County's done a great job with their graduation rates. However, the number you quote is traditional high schools. What happens if you put in alternative high schools?
Sure. So that it depends. So the traditional high schools includes all of our 23 traditional schools. And it doesn't include charters. If you include charter schools or alternative schools, it's 89%, 88.8%. So still higher than the state average. Some of the alternative school students still count back to the sending school. So they still, those cohorts. So if you're in the cohort, they still count you in the cohort. So they start counting those numbers when you enter your freshman year through your senior year. And then after that, they don't count towards graduation anymore. If they choose to go to another, say they disenroll and they go to another, they wouldn't be counted. But if they're still enrolled in our operated schools, and we have alternative schools too, then they would still count.
All right.
Mhm.
That was a complicated answer, but yes, I understand. It's
Sure.
complicated.
Yeah.
It's a complicated equation. It takes a couple.
Yeah, well, it's just know that they do measure it by 4-year cohorts, like in college, they don't, they measure the cohort in 6 years in universities and 4 years in 2-year colleges. So, in public schools, they measure it in 4 years and 4 years. So.
All right. Second question has to do with the priorities for the half cent. The first half cent prioritized new buildings and created some really strange dynamics in that. And my favorite is that West Orange High School was built and rebuilt before Edgewater High School was rebuilt, and Edgewater was seriously needed rebuilding. So it created some inequities. Have those been leveled out? Is Cove less? I think they were less stringent with their guidelines at this point and more realistic with the needs of the student.
Yeah, so the 136 schools that I mentioned before, that was a list that was adopted in 2002 that said these are the 136 schools that we will address and through the half-cent sales tax. We're finishing that list now. Literally the last 3 schools will be dedicated, which are Orange Technical College campuses. So the downtown campus was just finished. The East Campus and West Campus are finishing up and will be dedicated this year. And then South Campus is going to start construction, which is John Young. And those are the last kind of 3 or 4 campuses that are part of that 136. That was a prioritized list. They kind of moved schools around on that list based on if they needed a new system of some kind, and that could not be done without completely renovating. So there was some movement around, but they've done them all. Winter Park High School right now they're coming back around and getting a full renovation right now that's happening. It'll finish in 2 years, but that's their 25-year. There's other schools out there. Those 75 schools on the list will hit 25 years in the next 10 years. And that's the main priority now is to make sure that they're ranked and taken care of. So.
Thank you for the great presentation. Absolute no-brainer for me. We need a strong education system in Orange County, and I'm definitely checking that box in November.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, the voucher system, have you noticed any kind of uptrend, downtrend? Has it been taken up in numbers that affect the system in any way? And if they do, are they hurting or helping OCPS?
It's a good question. I actually had an enrollment slide on there that we saw briefly. On the enrollment slide, the two things happened. So the pandemic, the highest enrollment we had in Orange County was 212,000 students. That was in 2019. When the pandemic hit, our enrollment went to 202,000. So we dropped about 10,000 students. Variety of reasons, homeschool out of it. After that happened, we saw a trend, obviously, when the pandemic ended, where we saw students returning. The Family Empowerment Scholarship, which had been around, but was limited. It was limited to based on income of the family, and it was based on prior public attendance. When all of those things were taken away, and anyone could apply for an $8,500 scholarship, regardless of income, regardless of prior experience, we did see a downward trend of students, specifically younger ones, kindergarten, not even putting their kids ever in school, but opting to go to a qualifying private school. And so that's happened. We've started to see an uptick in our enrollment, but not at the same level that we were seeing pre-pandemic and pre-scholarship changes. So we do see huge numbers of enrollment and pockets in certain areas where they're new areas where families move there specifically for the new schools. Innovation High School, for example, the new high school, that's that will be full. Lake Nona High School was bursting at the seams. Those areas are certainly in demand. There's other areas that parents are choosing because there's closer options to take the Family Empowerment Scholarship. So that does create a bit of an issue as far as rezoning and things like that. Thank you. Thanks for that question. It's a good question.
What is the biggest challenge? And you said 170 some odd languages.
Mhm.
So we're basically forced to take all these people in that can't even speak English, and then we have to provide teachers to deal with all that. And a lot of these people aren't even citizens. That's got to be a tremendous tax on our system. And actually, I look at it and think, gosh, my grandchildren are in the public school, some of them, and how is it getting watered down for them because of other people coming in here that aren't even citizens?
Yeah. Well, some of them are because they come from Puerto Rico, so they speak.
But a lot of them aren't.
That's not their primary language. That's the majority that we get in Orange County. And so we serve those through ESOL classes. We have teachers that teach ESOL, so they're teaching English to English language learners. And so that's a big part of it. And just trying to get them acclimated and certainly doing that. We did very proud, like Marshall Nirenberg graduated from Orlando High School, which was Howard. He broke the genetic code in 1968, and very proud of that. He's a Hall of Famer from Orange County. So certainly a lot of advances. We know that we've had a number of prominent graduates from Orange County, and certainly try to provide them a world-class education, both secondary and post-secondary, all the way through. And so all good questions, all reasons to continue to innovate and to do new things. I think that we do know the impact of devices and computers, and our district is one-on-one, and those devices are paid for in the infrastructure through the half-cent sales tax. We did implement the no cell phone policy last year, which was very successful when it came to implementing that and the way we were able to affect discipline and outcomes. And so we've been very pleased with that, and are continuing that. So they use the devices that they have with that has all of their textbooks and other things in them, but they can't use their devices from bell to bell during the day. Otherwise, it'll be taken away and they will be disciplined. So that has certainly been a positive for us, not necessarily for them, but I know the students feel a little anxious about putting their phones away and keeping them away, but it's working out. So anyway, so thank you. Hey, Judge.
Good. I've always been amazed that the legislature will do what I call sleight of hand. Why is it they reduce the amount of money you are getting when the rate of student increase is exponential? And then force you to request a local tax? And the second thing is, I was at an elementary school with the Rotary, and they had an emergency drill, and everybody went to a closet, cut off the lights on their phone, and kept quiet. How serious is the impact on young children when there are shootings and they read about or hear shootings on television, like yesterday?
Yeah, that is a good question. In fact, you know, when there is an incident like what happened yesterday in Georgia, we get those questions. We do have a team that anytime there's a crisis situation, we have crisis teams that go out and deal, and all of our SAFE coordinators or counselors on site are trained to talk to students and work with students. It's an issue that, you know, especially when something happens where they're dealing with the anxiety, and certainly parents are as well. And so having the support systems for them, and we put out information out to the schools to make sure they know. The question about reducing our funding is certainly an issue. I think the legislature in 2008, when we were starting in the beginning of the recession, they looked at the amount of money that was being generated through property tax and the amount that was coming out of their general revenue that was declining rapidly. And they said, look, we can no longer afford to fund new school construction or any portion of that for the schools. They can have impact fees they can use. And so they start looking at other sources of revenue and the stability of those or the growth of those, and then say, we can take away this. And so we are seeing an impact certainly on what vouchers are doing in pulling revenue out, not allowing the per student funding to go up proportionately, and allowing that, you know, unfettered, unencumbered use of those vouchers to take money out of the system. That is concerning, and not knowing what quality of education, to your point, what quality of education are they getting in that private school that's not testing for reading in 10th grade, right? They're not testing for reading in 3rd grade. They're saying, you know, hey, we don't have to do that because we're a private school, or we provide these type of test scores and not these types. So, you know, we as taxpayers and we as expect a certain level of education, and that if we're not getting that, it should be reflected either on the district or the school. And it should be the same way with private schools if they're taking public dollars. So,
Thank you so much.
thank you. Thanks.
Great presentation.
Appreciate it.
We're gonna go right, yep, so you can complete your set of glassware.